What happens when a young American woman leaves behind everything, her family, her citizenship, and her identity, to marry a charming prince, only to find that the crown she inherits is nothing but a burden? Hope Cook's journey from a college student to the Queen of Sikkim is a story filled with betrayal, scandal, and a political storm that would tear apart both her marriage and the tiny Himalayan kingdom. But how does a dream of love and royalty turn into a life of heartbreak and exile? And what dark secrets made it impossible for Hope to ever escape her nightmare? Keep watching to uncover the shocking truth. Hope Cook's story starts off like something out of a movie. She was born on June 24, 1940, to John J. Cook, an Irish-American flight instructor, and Hope Noyes, a daring amateur pilot. But tragedy struck early in her life. When she was just 2 years old, her mother lost her life in a tragic solo flight crash. After that, Hope and her half-sister were sent to live with their grandparents in New York. However, life didn't cut her any slack. When her grandparents passed away, young Hope found herself under the care of her aunt and uncle, Mary Paul Noyes and Selden Chapin, who happened to be a former U.S. ambassador to Iran and Peru. Fast forward to 1959, Hope was now a wide-eyed college freshman at Sarah Lawrence, majoring in Asian studies. It was during this time that fate took her on a journey to India, and right into the hills of Darjeeling. There, she met someone who would change the course of her life forever. Palden Thondup Namgyal, the Crown Prince of Sikkim. At first glance, Namgyal didn't exactly fit the fairy tale prince mold. He was already a widower with 3 children. But love has a funny way of showing up when you least expect it. And it did just that for Hope and Namgyal. They were smitten. 2 years later, in 1961, the couple made things official by announcing their engagement to the world. But this wasn't just a regular wedding. This was royalty-level grand. And it needed to be perfect, down to the very stars. Sikkim's royal astrologer went all out with astrological calculations, finally deciding that the best day to tie the knot was March 20th, 1963. The wedding was nothing short of spectacular, with guests including Indian royalty, social elites, and the U.S. ambassador to India, John Kenneth Galbraith. Becoming the wife of the crown prince came with a hefty price, though. Hope was required to give up her U.S. citizenship and officially become a citizen of Sikkim. Just like that, she was wiped off the social registers back home in the U.S. But that wasn't the only compromise she made. While her husband followed Buddhism, Hope, who had dabbled in Buddhist practices from a young age, never fully converted from Christianity. It was a balancing act between 2 worlds, 2 identities, and 2 religions. And for Hope Cook, this was only the beginning of a life full of complicated twists and turns. Her fairy tale life as a queen seemed destined for greatness, until reality came crashing down. When King Sir Tashi Namgyal passed away, his son Palden Thondup Namgyal ascended the throne. On April 4th, 1965, Palden was officially crowned the Chogyal, King of Sikkim, and Hope became the Gyalmo, Queen. In public, it was a moment of triumph, cementing their place in history. But behind the scenes, storm clouds were already gathering. The political climate in Sikkim was simmering with tension. The people were growing restless, demanding a bigger say in governance. The ethnic divides that ran through the nation only fueled the unrest. Inspired by India's success with democracy, a movement for political change gained momentum, and by 1973, the situation erupted into chaos after a disputed election. The unrest spiraled into violence, and by 1975, the Indian military annexed Sikkim, wiping the monarchy from the map forever. Amid this turmoil, Hope Cook became an easy scapegoat. The Indian media pounced, accusing her of being a CIA agent, spinning every misstep in the kingdom as part of a sinister plot. The pressure was relentless, and the weight of public blame began to take a toll on her marriage. Slowly but surely, the cracks started to show, and the once strong bond between Hope and Paulden began to unravel. But the real monsters in Hope's story weren't just political. They emerged from within the marriage itself. Paulden Thondup. Namgyal, though revered as a forward-thinking ruler, harbored a darker side. Under his leadership, Sikkim stood out as a beacon of progress, with literacy rates and per capita income surpassing that of neighboring countries like Nepal, Bhutan, and even India. He fought to maintain his tiny nation's independence, sandwiched between an assertive India on one side and a communist-dominated Tibet on the other. As Hope herself would later reveal, Paulden Thondup Namgyal was not just a king fighting political battles. He was also a heavy-drinking womanizer with an unapologetic streak of toxic masculinity. Even with financial pressures bearing down on him, Paulden managed to maintain an affair with a married woman from Belgium. This wasn't just a fleeting romance. It lasted before and during his marriage to Hope. Weeks before the birth of their first child, he even flew to Belgium to see her. The betrayal wasn't hidden. Hope could feel it in the letters his lover sent, written on crisp, rustling paper. At night, when her husband hugged her, she could hear those letters crinkle inside his bathrobe. And when one slipped from his pocket and fell to the floor, Hope would quietly read it while Paulden performed his Buddhist prayers at the altar. The pressure on Paulden grew worse with the death of Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first prime minister. Nehru had carefully maintained Sikkim's autonomy, but with him gone, Paulden saw the writing on the wall. His drinking intensified, and his temper exploded into fits of rage. In one such outburst, he hurled Hope's beloved record player, the only thing connecting her to her life in the West, right out of the window. As their relationship disintegrated, so did Sikkim's independence. Indira Gandhi, Nehru's daughter, was determined to annex the tiny kingdom. With Sikkim slipping through their fingers, Hope poured herself into running cottage industries and fighting alongside her husband to fend off Indian domination. But deep down, she knew she was chasing something else, a love that barely existed, if it ever did. Her days became a haze of alcohol and pills. In the mornings, she entertained visiting journalists, joking about her 30 ways to prepare yak. But behind closed doors, she was drinking beer before noon, living on whiskey, Valium, and cigarettes the rest of the day. The weight of her unfulfilled marriage grew heavier with every passing moment. During one of her yearly trips to New York, loneliness and longing pushed her into the arms of an old friend from her teenage years. What began as a fleeting escape turned into a haunting memory, one that would follow her back to the Far East, where she lay in bed, dazed from whiskey and Valium, listening to Joan Baez sing freedom songs. By late 1973, as India's grip on Sikkim tightened, Hope had reached her breaking point. She had given birth to 2 children by then, but the life she had once dreamed of was gone. One day, she quietly packed her things and, with her children in tow, boarded a plane to New York, leaving Sikkim, her crown, and Paulden behind for good. She would never return. The divorce was finalized in 1980, bringing an end to the turbulent love story that had once captured the world's imagination. Just 2 years later, on January 29, 1982, Paulden Thondup. Namgyal lost his battle with cancer at the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, and with that, the final chapter of their tragic tale was closed. A story that began with hope, but ended with heartbreak and shattered dreams. Stripped of her royal title and back in the U.S., Hope Cook found herself in an unsettling limbo. Having renounced her American citizenship years earlier to marry into Sikkim's monarchy, she was now technically stateless. Reclaiming her U.S. citizenship wasn't simple. Her request faced opposition in Congress and remained in limbo for years before it was finally approved. With child support and an inheritance to lean on, Hope focused on giving her children a good education. The glamour of royalty was long gone, and she settled into a life far removed from palaces and politics. Yet, even without the crown, Hope built a career on her own terms, reinventing herself as a writer and journalist. In 1981, she poured her extraordinary life into an award-winning memoir, Time Change, an autobiography, chronicling her years as the Queen of Sikkim and the turbulence that followed. She didn't stop there. Several other books soon followed. In 1983, Hope married again, this time to Mike Wallace, a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and a distinguished professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. But even that chapter didn't last. They eventually divorced, parting ways for good. After the split, Hope spent a few years living in London before returning to the US, where she found her home in Brooklyn. Today, she lives a quieter life, far removed from the public eye. She continues to work as a writer, historian, and lecturer, sharing her remarkable journey, a life marked by love, loss, royalty, and reinvention. Her story, though filled with twists and heartbreak, is ultimately one of resilience, proving that even after the fall of a kingdom, there's always a way to rebuild. In the end, was Hope Cook's downfall the result of love, fate, or forces beyond her control? If she could do it all over again, would she still trade her life in New York for a crown in Sikkim? Or was the price of royalty simply too high? Let us know. What would you have done in her shoes? Also, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating videos like this one.